Hello, welcome to session 10 of Sigma Training. My name is Kim Blake and this session is on portfolios and validation. As before, I'm just going to show you one slide with the agenda, then I'll move into the live database. So in this session, I'll be covering how to view the portfolios and explain what they are, and how to then add and edit portfolios. I'll then move on to viewing validation rules, and again, I'll explain what they are. And then we'll have a look at adding and editing validation rules. So I've opened Sigma. I started off on my tree configuration page. That's my home page, but I'm going to move to the portfolios menu. So invoice validation, portfolios, manage portfolios. So at least one portfolio needs to exist on your database, and you'll have a default portfolio in there. New ones can be added. And a portfolio is a group of accounts which can be assigned to a set of validation rules. So there's two things that we need. We need the portfolio and we also need the validation rules. And I'll show you those shortly. So I've got 4 different ones in here as examples. And as we move across the page, you can see I've got 5 accounts associated with the demo portfolio, 28 checks, so invoice validation checks. We've got the date it was created. So if I click on the hyperlink here, you can see we've got 5 accounts and again the name. If I use the drop down, it then lists the 5 accounts that are associated with that portfolio. If I want to do any amendments, I need to change them within the database, not from here. So if I close out of there, right click, and you'll see we've got the options to edit, to view the accounts, to view the invoices, and to delete the portfolio. So if I edit, we can see here the path, we can see the name. If I click next, it then shows me the 5 accounts that are linked to it. I could untick if I wanted to take any out. If I want to add them in, I'd add that from the account. So when the account's created, it has to have a portfolio. So I'll just cancel from here. And OK. So the other options we have is to view the accounts. And again, this lists it in the accounts page. So I've moved to a separate page now rather than within the portfolio. And you could do the usual things there. So I can click on an account number, see the details or edit it. I can see any open queries. I can add new accounts in here, etc. I'm going to use the back button and come back to my portfolio. Right click again and view invoices. So this time it'll open up the invoices page. It pre-fills the date range. If I change that and apply, we can then see invoices in there. And we're looking at the demo portfolio. So it's the invoices associated to the accounts that are in the demo portfolio. Again, if I click on the back button and come back to the portfolios. So if I right click again and edit and next, we saw the accounts here. If I go next again, we can see the different validation groups that are set up in the database, and we can see the one that this particular portfolio is associated to. So I'm going to move on to have a look at this demo validation group, and you can see the types of validation that's in there. Just cancel from there. And just before I show you the validation group, if you wanted to add a new portfolio, you've got the add button here. From the invoice validation, if I come down to manage validation rules, and here we have those groups, and the one that the portfolio I've just looked at, the demo portfolio, is associated with the demo validation set of rules. So the validation are the rules that are used when an invoice goes through the system, whether or not it's an invoice that's coming through EDI or an import or a manual bill. It's using those validation rules. So this particular validation rule group is associated to 2 portfolios and has 28 checks in it. And they're split out between critical, asset, cost and usage, reads and usage, invoice only checks, invoices versus actual, and pass through. If I right click on here, you've got the options to view, edit and delete. And if I view, we can see here the list of validation in those groups. So if I open up the critical, we can see that they're all in there. They're in there by default. And if I hover over the little I, we can see what each of those ones do. If I come down to the cost ones, we can see here the 3 that are in this validation group have these 3 in here. And again, we've got the I to tell us what they do. And then we've got a low and a high tolerance. So if you just wanted a high tolerance, you could just fill in the high tolerance and vice versa. You don't have to have both in there. But this is how this particular set of rules is set up. Again, I could edit from here. I go next. And then we can see here the critical ones we can't change. But anything else I can tick or untick. So I could edit it by changing those or changing the parameters. You'll note with the lower parameter, sorry, the lower tolerance, it's a minus figure in there, and then it's just a figure for the higher tolerance. I'm just going to cancel from there. Right click again. So I went through view, but I got to the edit by viewing and then clicking edit. Or if I right click and edit, it takes me straight in and I can edit from there. And the last option there is the delete, and obviously that would delete it. So once you have a portfolio, at least one, and you have a validation group, the 2 are joined together. And then when you put your invoices in, it will do those checks. With any checks that are checking for pence per unit or standing charge, they can only be done if you've got a contract set up on the associated meter, and that contract details will be checked against the bill when the bill comes in. So just as an example, if I come back to the invoice validation menu and come down to manage accounts, and I'm going to clear the filter to see all and have a look at this particular account number here. If I click on the account number, we can see it's the demo portfolio. And we know that in that demo portfolio, it has the demo validation rules. I can see the meter that's associated to it. So if I copy that meter number, let's go to the setup menu and to configure tree. I'm going to search that meter number. So it's found it. So the meter number is the MPAN. The meter name is Training Elec NHH meter. If I edit, so click on edit or right click and configure the meter and look at the contract tab, we can see any accounts that are on the site, but the one that's ticked is the one that is associated to the meter I'm looking at the moment. And then we've got a cost contract. So that's the contract in the database that is linked to the meter and the account. So that's used twofold. It's used for doing the validation against things like pence per unit, VAT, etc. But it can also be used to do cost reporting for the meter. So they all need to link up in order to be able to do those checks. So let's have a look at an invoice. If I go to the invoice validation menu, down to manage invoices, Again, I'll clear and search for KLG. And I'm going to have a look at this invoice here. So if I right click and view the validation overview, this will show me how this invoice did against its validation. So it's showing me it's failed on a duplicate invoice number, and it's failed here on a meter advance check, and then a consumption percentage, and these ones here. It doesn't by default show me those that it's passed or skipped. If I click on the passed, it will show those as well. But by default, it's showing you everything it's failed on. If you just wanted to see the invoice ones, you can unclick the others and you'd see just those. We'll bring them all back in. If I was looking at the invoice itself or processing the invoice, if I right click and edit and go next and next through the bill and the consumption and the charges, and then to save and validate, we can see the invoice screen here with all those failures. So I'm just going to cancel from there. And then move to the help pages. So within the help pages, there's a section on invoice validation. There's a page that gives you hyperlinks on how to set up the portfolio. So you need at least one cost contract if you want to do those validation against pence per unit, standing charge, etc. You can see how to check the meter against a cost contract. So when I looked at the meter and looked at the contract tab, how to associate the contract, how to create a validator group, how to create at least one portfolio, and then it moves on to the accounts and the invoices. And then we have separate pages here about the portfolio and the validation rules. And then there's a validation list page. So this lists out the validations in their different groups, what they do, and what sort of check they are. So just moving back into the database, I've looked at the portfolios, the manage portfolio with the right click to edit, view the accounts, view the invoices, or delete. And then I looked at the validation rules, and again the right click options to view, to edit it, or to delete it. That's it for this session. If you get any questions, please let me know. Thank you for listening.